our parables, the series on the parables of Jesus. Today I have chosen a very small, short, very brief parable. It is so brief that sometimes it may not look like a parable even, because there are very few details in it, and the story is very short. That's found in chapter 24, verses 45 to 51. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, 45 to 51. If you could read it with me. Jesus asked this question: "Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom his master has set over his household, to give them food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that wicked servant says to himself, 'Master is delayed,' and begins to beat his fellow servants and eats and drinks with drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at that hour he does not know, and will cut him into pieces and put him in with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." As you see that, there is not much details in that story. It's a very brief parable. There is no creation of the scene or the description of the scene at all. Just direct, straightforward parable. And if you had looked at that passage, chapter 24 and 25 is talking about the coming of Jesus, the future events. In this particular story, there are two or one servant. Maybe there are two, or there are one servant with two possibilities, two options. One, he can behave well, or he can behave very bad. So let's go for convenience sake for one servant with two possibilities. The given servant can have two behavior. What is the first behavior? Let's go back to chapter 24, verse 45. He will be a very caring, loving, and faithful and wise. Now, this comes in a context of many other parables where Jesus talks about the end times. I should say more that Jesus is talking about the future, and immediate future and the distant future. And if you go back home and you can read it again, and the first part of it is, it talks about the desolation of the temple within 20 to 35 years after his death. That happened. And then it talks about the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 68, 70. That happened. That is in the first century itself. Within 30 to 40 years of Jesus' death and resurrection, all these things happened. And he talks about the fleeing, the flight of his disciples to a safer place when these things happen in Jerusalem. So all these things happened within that span of 30 to 40 years of time. Then he talks about the distant future. The distant future is the second coming of Jesus Christ. And he talks about it sometimes in sayings, sometimes he talks about in parables. And two, three things that are very clear in all these sayings of Jesus is, the first thing is the certainty of his coming. In 24:46, I'll just limit myself to this parable. "Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes." So the certainty of Jesus is coming. And that is a hope that we have. You take this doctrine of the second coming of Jesus from the Christian faith, then Christian faith is like any other faith. And what I mean? Think of a spirituality, a religion where there is the hope of God returning to the world. There is no other place. Islam talks about it, but Islam talks about Jesus coming back, not the prophet coming back. Prophet will never come back. Nobody else will come back. No other prophets will come back. But only Jesus will come according to Islam. Judaism talks about a Messiah coming. They don't have a hope of a second coming. But take this doctrine of Jesus' second coming, the physical return of Jesus' coming, then Christianity is like any other spirituality. It is better to do yoga every day or go to gym like these people went. That's it. But make sure that you wear a better one. I'm talking about you can be indulged in this world and have a nice time in this world. Why should we pray? Why should we come to church? Why should we keep our lives holy if there is no second coming of Jesus Christ? So that certainty, if you read 24 and 25, one thing that comes again and again and again and again in Jesus' teaching is Jesus will come. Definitely come. Acts also talks about the same Jesus. The same Jesus means the Jesus who came to this world and incarnated in the form of a carpenter, or as a baby who became a carpenter, who died on the cross. The same Jesus will come, not another God is going to come. That is the crux of Christian faith. The crux of the Christian faith. You take it out of the Christian teaching, then Christianity becomes or another religion, any other religion. A second important part of this is when we talk about the certainty of Jesus' coming, the second important part in contrast is the uncertainty of the time. The certainty of his coming is one aspect. Uncertainty of the time is another important aspect. Many times, I grew up in a church which had a little bit of fundamentalistic leanings, and we used to hear lots and lots of sermons about the second coming of Jesus. And it's all about dividing the dispensations and things like that, and some of them were very clearly would say this is the year and that and this also. Nothing had that sort of happened so far, right? What I'm trying to say is that people used to predicting the times, but that is against the Bible. The Bible talks about the unpredictability of the coming. But if anyone teaches that Jesus' coming is predictable, that is a false teaching. You read chapter 24-25, read 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, where the day will come as a thief. He will come as a thief, unannounced. That is the another important aspect of the teaching about Jesus' coming. Third important aspect is this little parable reflects all this. This little parable reflects all this. That is, there will be a judgment when he comes. What's the form of that judgment? We don't know really. It is a separation. It is a fire. It is the gnashing of teeth. There are lots of metaphors used. But it is definitely leaving out those who are not ready for him. They will not be taken with him. Now, that goes on to tell not only the three things, but it talks about, when you move on to chapter 25, it talks about the 10 virgins who were 5 had oil and the 5 did not have oil in their lamps. And that's a theme, again in the context of this teaching of Jesus, chapter 24 and 25, Jesus says, you have to be ready. Because of the certainty, because of his coming. Secondly, because of the uncertainty of his coming. Thirdly, because of the dire consequences. If you are not ready, you got to be ready. That is the story, the parable of the 10 virgins. I hope you are familiar with it. If God allows, we will look at that parable at a later time. Then he goes on to tell another parable in chapter 25, verses 14 to 13. That parable has to do with the talents. The master who went and entrusted certain amounts of money with each 3 of his servants. And what was their failure when they came? That is, they were not faithful with the talents that was entrusted to them. So here you have the theme again applied. That is, When Jesus comes back, you have to be ready, you have to be faithful. Now, this parable that we have here actually zeroes down on these two things. How should we behave in the absence of the master? That is a theme. The basic thought here is a very simple thing. How do we behave when the master is away? We have this English saying, when the cat is, help me. When the cat is away, the mice have their way. Am I right? Oh yeah, had a play, whatever it is. How do we behave when the cat is away? That is when the master is away, how do we behave? Now here is the story. Let's go back to the passage again. And I'll simply explain one by one. We'll go back to the passage again. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom his master will set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? The question has nothing to do with Jesus' coming. Jesus says, to introduce a story, he starts with a question. Who is the faithful and wise servant? How do we measure Christian faithfulness and Christian wisdom? How do we measure faithfulness and wisdom? Is wisdom the ability to preach, to sing, conduct Bible studies, group discussions, leading people to Christ? Is that wisdom? Is faithfulness regular church attendance, giving to the church, being there for the service and serve each other? Is that faithfulness? Jesus tries to define these two qualities now. And maybe one more thing, that is readiness. Faithful and wise servant. How is wisdom and faithfulness defined? Now, then he talks about the two possibilities, this way or that way. Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, that is, he will be faithful and wise. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all possessions. But if that wicked servant chooses to say to himself, my master is delayed, and begins to beat. This story is really, sometimes looks very unrealistic to me. Begins to beat his fellow servants. Have you ever seen people beating up each other? I mean, not beating up each other, no. The servant beating up the fellow servants, and he eats. That is nothing wrong, but eating and drinking with drunkards. The master of the servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and an hour he does not know. Look, both these servants were very, very busy. Very busy. The first one was very busy caring for the household. The other one was very busy. What was keeping him busy? His own indulgence. He was focusing more on himself. Servant A, he is a caring servant. Servant A, the first servant, he gives the servants, other servants, their food at the proper time. He is a very caring servant. Secondly, this servant is a very faithful servant. What is faithfulness? Faithfulness have different shades of meaning. One meaning is this servant is a trustworthy servant. He is so committed to his task, the job that is entrusted to him, fully engrossed in the tasks that are given. And he is a wise person as well. What is wisdom? Wisdom is here in this context the ability to judge things, make a proper understanding of things. That is the judgment. There are things that look alike, but there's a difference. He's a wise person. He can take a wise decisions. Now, the second servant, in contrast, is an uncaring servant. What is he doing, this servant? The house is in a mess now. Now the picture is of that of the governors, house governors or butlers. In the colonial days, Indian British officers, their household also had this. That is, they will have a huge house, lots of servants, and even now, rich families, aristocratic families, they have. And one person is in charge of the whole house, and the master will be a sort of a distant person, will be taken care of by this. He takes care of the children, the accounts, and the estates, and everything. Now, the 7b is a possibility that we can choose. He starts beating up everybody. And the three important things about his negative things are uncaring, he's a self-destructive, and he's a negligent person. While the master is away, what is the rat doing? That's the question. When the cat is away, the rat is uncaring, self-destructive, and negligent. Let's look at each of these. He starts beating up the fellow servants. Maybe an exaggeration, but not that was true in the Galatian church and many other churches. In the church in Corinth, people were taking each other to the court for legal disputes. There is a lot of division in the Corinthian church, and very graphically in the church in Galatia, chapter 5 verse 15, Galatians chapter 5:15, but if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. What's the picture we get in the Galatians, the church in Galatia or the churches in Galatia, is that everybody is at war at each other. The church members are at war at each other. Everybody want to devour each other, and like some snakes devour themselves, they start biting their own tail. Now that's the mess that happens in a congregation when the congregation loses sight of the second coming of Jesus Christ. When they have lost the hope of his return, his certain return at the uncertain time. When a congregation loses sight of the certain coming of Jesus at the uncertain time, they start devouring each other. That is the reason why some churches preach a lot about Jesus' second coming, but the ground reality is that there is a lot of division, there is a lot of politics, nobody wants to see each other. They are a very divided community. That's about our community life. That's about our life together. Now, a second aspect is the self-destructive aspect. What is the basis of our personal holiness? Why should we keep our life pure before God, acceptable before God, live a sanctified life? The reason again is the certain coming of Jesus Christ at an uncertain time. The reason for our personal life is to be because we believe that Jesus will come certainly at a very uncertain time. Witness in the college campuses, among people of my own age, many of my friends, sometimes younger than me, sometimes a little older than me or my own age, they used to say, Paulson, why don't we have a nice, wonderful life like you, unlike you? Why don't I have a wonderful life? And like that testimony of that man in that last camp, after enjoying the life, as I like, all the pleasures of life, just before death or when I get old, get converted, saved, and lead a holy life. What a wonderful formula it is, isn't it? Yes, that is possible. That's possible, provided we knew when the day and the hour that he comes. Right? And the Bible says no. No one knows the day and the hour of his coming. If I knew, I tell you, I would have waited to give my life to Jesus. The reason I gave my life to Jesus, and the reason I live my life fearfully before God and carefully before God, I don't know what hour of the night he is coming. That is our hope. I'll come back to that in a minute. What does the Bible say? The Bible says in 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 8, be sober minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Be sober. What is sobriety mean? It meaning knowing what we are doing and its consequence. Sometimes people go to church. It's good to see people in the church, but it may be really scary to see what they do between Monday to Saturday. It's wonderful to have people. Church is full. I praise God, and especially through the ushers for packing people so beautifully today. See, the question we should ask every day is, did I lead my life consciously, or was I in a dazed way moved? You know what I dazed? As if we had taken cough syrup. Now, did we lead our Christian life, live every day under the influence of some sort of sedative, or were we aware or drunkenness, or were we sober? The being sober is what brings us to our knees again and again and again. That is the reason for repentance. That's the reason for confession. That is the reason for personal holiness. What is that? Living consciously, not under the stupor of some drunk. I'll come back to that also in a minute, in much more detail. Third aspect of this servant was negligence. He said to himself, my master is delayed, is delaying his coming. How long can you wait for a master? See, this happens with children. Mom and dad will go for shopping, leaving the entire house in the hands of the children, and they will wait for a while. But when mom comes late, what do they do with the kitchen and the house? It reflects the quality of the children, isn't it? Right? I mean, I'm not saying that if you're hungry you should not help. That even married people also do. When the wife is late, we also help ourselves into the kitchen and eat and leave the plate unclean, to be washed later. But that's another issue. What I'm talking about, when the rat is delayed, when the cat is delayed, will the rat behave or not? Now, summing up, let's look at our Christian life. Our life as believers, as disciples who wait for the Lord's coming. While moving on, I want to point out a danger. This may be my prejudice, which is as a result of my experience in ministry and my Christian life. When people say, I am studying eschatology and read all the books and everything they can get on the end times, number 666, the beast and all sort of things, there's an alarm built in me. I become very seriously start doubting their ethical and moral life. Why? I said, don't take this as inspired utterances. My own experience have taught me, People who specialize in these things normally ignore their day-to-day moral and spiritual ethical life. This is most often found as an escape route. To run away from present day realities to focus on the future is an escape. I'm not generalizing most of the time. Because the Bible pricks their conscience. When the Bible hurts, when the teachings of Jesus start hurting us, in the sense judging us, it is better to put all our efforts in things that is yet to come. Run away from present day responsibilities. To be fascinated by things that are uncertain yet. That is the problem with the present day church. The present day church either has two extremes now. I have seen two extremes in the preaching. One is talk about how to succeed in our material world. That is one danger. The other danger is how to just be fascinated and amused about things to come with absolutely no relationship with our present day life. When that happens, that's a problem. But this parable is very, very, very clear. Jesus corrects a mistake, and that mistake is, are you waiting for the Lord to come? Prove it with your life now. What is the evidence of the Lord, if you believe in Jesus coming or not? What is the evidence that we believe in the certain coming of the uncertain at an uncertain time of Jesus? Prove it with our life now, in the congregational life, in our personal life. What is our relationship with each other? Last Sunday we talked about consider the younger ones as sisters, the older ones as your mothers or parents. That was our preaching last Sunday, isn't it? That constraint comes from, we do that because we believe in the certain coming of at an uncertain time of our Lord Jesus. Why do people devour each other? You go to some churches, I hope that day will not come here at all, one day. And that day I will cease to be a pastor. You know what happens after the Sunday service? They literally tear each other. Why? Because they have no hope of a king who is coming to judge, who calls us to live our life in fear. We have a hope. I say it repeatedly, I believe in the second coming of Jesus, the physical, literal coming of Jesus, the same Jesus. But I also believe that he comes at an uncertain time. We have a hope, and that hope makes us three things to us. What are the three things? It makes us sober. It makes us sober and sober and sober. Sometimes our brains get so cloudy. We go to a daze, sedated. Then when you sit down, relax, have a cup of water and some refreshing drink or food, you get some clarity in thought, isn't it? I walked in the sun for almost 6-7 hours yesterday, in this summer sun yesterday. I walked and came back tired. But see, my eyes vision was diminishing, but I need to restore myself. Now what did St. Paul say in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 6? He talks about we don't have time today. If you read the whole chapter of chapter 5 verses 1 onwards, chapter 11, he repeats Jesus' parable. He repeats Jesus' parable in a slightly different way. He says Jesus will come as a thief at night. He talks about the trumpet. And he says, because we are the people of the day, let us not sleep as others do. Let us keep awake and be sober. Let us not sleep. That is, let us not go into a slumber. Like that 5 virgins did. You have a choice now. Christian the choice is, you want to live a unconscious, semi-conscious life, unaware or absolute negligence to what Jesus expects from us, or we'll keep awake, alert and be sober. Alert and be sober. Many times some people are very not so sober at all. They lost their consciousness that they even forget that it is Sunday morning. Many people don't come to church because they have ignored the fact, every day closely. What is there a special brightness on Sunday morning every day? No. Why do we come? Probably you will say that you come because you have to prepare and preach a sermon, and the worship leaders have a reason, isn't it? No. It's what I'm trying to say is that if you have lost distinction between what belongs to God and what belongs to the world, we are sleeping. We are sleeping. If we lost that distinction between what belongs to God and what belongs to the world, we are simply sleeping. We are not sober at all. We are drunken. But if we have a hope of Jesus coming, we cannot afford to be drunken like that. Secondly, it's a hope that cares for each other, makes us care for each other. That is the basis of the community. Look at chapter 5 of Thessalonians again, 1 Thessalonians, verse 11. He says, therefore, why? He is coming at an unpredictable time. Because of that, encourage one another, build one another up, just as you are doing. I also notice some bonding in the church. Some people are so bonded together, and sometimes I think that bonding is also some dangerous. They are so bonded, so there is no place for others to be in their clique. I'm not talking about that. See, we get spiritually bonded with each other, click with each other, and because of that, we have a hope of Jesus' coming, and we would like to go there and to be with Him together. That is why we care for each other. The reason I always encourage people, all who can come, to come for the Wednesday service or for the Saturday evening prayer, is not because I get something out of it. No, I don't get a penny out of it. What I get is this thing that when I go to heaven, I will have a few of you with me in heaven. That is why I struggle. That is why I rebuke. That is why I correct people. That is why my face looks so, you don't want to see my face many times. You know why? Because God has given me this passion that because He is coming and we are going to a better place from here, I would like all of you be there. Let's encourage. What are we going to encourage? Don't worry, you will pass your final exam. Don't worry, you will get a better job. That is not the encouragement. All these encouragements come with a expiry tag on it. Your good job until retirement, isn't it? Your good health until you get a much more serious sickness. What more can I encourage you? Yes, I can pray for your deliverance today, but you may have it again. And maybe under my spiritual influence you will be delivered. But when you move out of another church or another city, the same thing, you may fall prey to the same thing. So nothing is permanent. The only permanent encouragement we can offer is, we are waiting for the King. He will come, and will come at an uncertain time. So let's encourage one another. Not only encourage, but build up each other. Build up each other, just as you are doing. Now, what a wonderful thing it is to be. I used to tell my wife, I should not have taken this church. Sometimes, when I am so pressurized, sometimes, pastor becomes like a pressure cooker without a vent. So much about to burst with the caring for others and all the responsibilities and all sort of things. You become like a pressure cooker which has no safety valve. But sometimes that is one side of it. The other side is, God gives a lot to you to invest in 50, 60 people. And I am pretty sure that when I am bankrupt, I can draw from the people whom I have invested in. That is why I will continue to be a pastor till next week. Why? When I am sick, I know that I can go to at least 10 people here, count on them, and when I am discouraged, whether I shared it or not, I know there is at least a couple of people here who are going to build me up by their faith. When a pastor becomes just a unidirectional pastor, just giving, which actually is very volatile thing and vaporizes to the thin air, the pastor will crumble under the burden of the congregation. But if I have invested something in his life and in your life and in your life, I am pretty sure when I run out of my encouragement, whatever encouragement I should have, I can draw it from people. That is the secret of the teaching about Jesus' coming. Build one another up. And that beautiful sentence that closed there, just as you are doing. But with the question to us is, are we doing? Are we doing? Have we told some people, see, look, you have a problem with concentration, I'll covenant with you, your exams are coming, you are not able to bury your head in the book for more than half an hour, but I stand with you, sister, I stand with you, brother, I will pray for you till your exams are over. That's a covenant between us. Could you make that covenant with somebody else? That is standing by each other. Not only in that, anything, in any aspect of our life, if we are investing in others, because we know one day when the Lord will come and we'll be with Him, and we want our friends also with us, isn't it? Yes? Yes. I don't know how heaven will look like. I have no clue. I don't know whether there will be a special place for core or something like that. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. Nothing at all. But only one thing I would like to know, that all of if Jesus comes today at 2 o'clock, there will be no Hindi service. That is the way we should behave. Why? He may come anytime. If Jesus, we should say, today 5:30, see, in my church, this used to be a very famous cliche. They used to say, if the Lord tarries, we'll have our convention in August 15th. If the Lord tarries. But the person who said that and the people who heard it never believed what they said. Practically. So it's always this language was there. I grew up with that language. Rich language. Sometimes it had no meaning, but for those who want to see meaning, it has meaning in it. Then, finally, the purifying thought. The purifying thought. Sanctifying thought. I have mentioned this many times. John says in 1 John 3:3, and everyone who thus hopes purifies himself as he is pure. He purifies himself. Because there are two possibilities when Jesus comes. We can be caught in doing the wrong thing, like this servant. You know what I mean? Can be caught in beating up people, eating people, caught in hating others, trying to destroy others, caught in distracting ourselves, caught in various other wrong things at which God doesn't approve. There's another possibility. We can be caught up with Him as well. There are two possibilities when the Lord comes. When the Master comes, there are two possibilities. We can be caught in, like the second servant did, doing the wrong things. Hating each other, envious of others, trying to destroy others, or we can be caught up with Him in the skies. This opportunity is open to us. What an amazing opportunity. Now I want to end with a personal note. I love this doctrine of the Lord's coming. Not because I want to escape from this world and responsibilities. Not because of that. I had heard a lot of sermons as I grew up in a church which preached always about these themes, or the church itself had its existence around this theme of the Lord coming. We did evangelism because the Lord is coming. Before the Lord comes, we should reach out all the world. That was the thing. And we should live holy lives before the Lord is coming. That was the amazing thought that I got from the church where I was raised. But it also did something else to me. The more and more I started meditating on this certain coming of Jesus Christ at an uncertain time, it took away all my fears and anxiety as well. Personally, it took away my fear and my anxiety. The things that I was afraid of, what will happen to me? I was so anxious about it. Now one of the things that helped me to deliver myself from that unfounded anxiety and fear is the certainty of the Lord's coming. Why should I bother if He is coming tomorrow? Why should I bother? Don't be very simplistic about it, but be serious about it. Why should I bother about preaching next week? I say, Lord, if you tarry, I will do that. If you don't, fine. There is always the possibility of my Lord's return, anytime. When you think about that, He may come next moment. He may come before I finish this sermon. And that is the best cure for anxiety and fear in our life. But we need to really believe this. He may come anytime. Praise be to God. Will you stand with me as we sing that song of hope, which we already sang? I see the King of glory. Let's sing that with faith, in faith now. But one day we will see Him really descending from heaven. He will come. And until that, let's sing this song at least for the day today, that I see the King of glory. And if that light dawns in our lives, settles down, praise be to God, there is nothing that is greater than that. Praise be to God.